Hey, I'm Davin Friedman, class of 2026. Welcome to the Rambler podcast.
And I'm Natalie Spano, class of 2026. Before you dive into this episode, we wanted to share a quick message with you.
At Cathedral Prep, every opportunity we have in the classroom, on the field, and beyond is made stronger by the Fund of Excellence.
This fund supports tuition assistance, academic programs, athletics, and faith formation. Everything that makes prep.
When you give, you help students like us thrive.
Please make your impact today by visiting www.cathedralprep.com/give.
Thank you for believing
in us.
Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 87 of the Rambler podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to have Ryan Dill on as a guest. Ryan is a proud Erie native, and he graduated from Cathedral Prep in 2014. He was a member of the 2012 state championship football team and delivered the commencement speech for his graduating class. The brotherhood he built during his time at Prep between his classmates, the coaches, and his faculty members remains one of the most meaningful parts of his life. Today, Ryan serves as the head of sales and marketing at Paragon International, multidisciplinary engineering firm, where he leads the company's business development strategy and oversees both direct and digital marketing initiatives. He also is the proud owner and founder of RME Services, LLC, which is a company focused on curating holistic health products designed to support a well-rounded lifestyle. Ryan's journey has taken him across Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and now Charlotte, North Carolina. Each move adding new depth to his resilience, perspective, and appreciation for people and culture. Along the way, he earned a degree in mechanical engineering from Penn State, launched a successful career in commercial construction sales, and grew into a passionate entrepreneur and leader. But Ryan's transformation hasn't just been professional, it's also been deeply personal. After losing over 100 pounds and rebuilding both his body and mindset, he's been preparing to compete in his first natural men's physique bodybuilding competition, which was in August of this year. That experience has fueled his passion for mental and physical fitness, and today he uses this story to inspire others to break through barriers in business, health, and life. How cool. Ryan is a powerful example of discipline, faith, and relentless self-belief, and we're honored to have him on the podcast to share his story with our community and the listeners to the episode. So, Ryan, great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Wow, Jimmy, what an amazing intro that was. I feel very honored, very privileged to be able to share this platform with you, and just wanted to thank you for allowing me to take some time and have some good conversation, good dialogue, and be able to provide the Rambler listeners and the Rambler alumni, hopefully some valuable nuggets of my experience so far. And just want to commend you too, Jimmy. You're doing an excellent job in your role, and I've really liked seeing all of your posts on LinkedIn, the media presence, and you certainly make me very proud as a Cathedral Prep alum.
Well, thank you very much for the flattery there. I really appreciate it. It's obviously, between being alum of Prep and for the alumni of Villa who are listening, we carry that P or that V on our chest with pride as we're out in the community and out in the world. And for me to have the honor of being able to work for the institution as well and represent, our alumni community with the work we do here is an honor. And I enjoy being able to share that through, as you mentioned, LinkedIn or other, media outlets and whatnot, and hosting the podcast. So it's been a lot of fun and a great joy.
That's awesome. I'm really happy for you, and keep up the good work. And hopefully 87 will be another good one.
That's right. That's right. Let's hope so. I'm sure it will be. And I always enjoy being able to start off the episodes by talking about, even from the beginning end, we kind of talk about in your bio what you go on to do beyond your years at Prep. But maybe we can start off talking a little bit about why you even decided to become a Rambler. And we were catching up on the phone the other day, and we kind of realized, hey, actually, you were a freshman when I was a senior here at Prep, which is pretty cool connection that we have. Although we didn't necessarily know each other friends, we were kind of like, yeah, we recognize their names and know the faces and whatnot. But yeah, if you could kind of start off by walking us back, what maybe made you decide to attend Cathedral Prep?
Yeah, Jimmy, you were always kind of the cool senior when I was just a young freshman starting out. So I looked up to you and the rest of your senior class. And I'm sure for the listeners out there, as you progress in your journey from freshman to sophomore, junior, senior year, there's new faces, new relationships all the time. And you always take, these valuable relationships and the lessons learned along the way. And so I looked up to you guys a lot, and I have some really good memories from that. But it's fun to kind of rewind the tape a little bit and go back to the beginning. And as I reflect, Jimmy, I was always really fortunate. I had I had a dad who went to Cathedral Prep and had great experiences. And so being from Erie, Pennsylvania, and then moving into all these different, cool places throughout my professional journey has been really exciting. But I always kind of knew deep down, I just really wanted to go to prep. I really wanted to experience the brotherhood. I wanted the education, the athletics, and I found that. And it was really home for me. And so there's probably a lot of people out there who are thinking about touring different high schools or deciding what's best for them. And I think if number one, I think you got to stay true to yourself and listen to your inner circle around you, your parents and friends, and allow them to help guide you. But it was kind of always, deep in my soul that I was going to be a Rambler, and it was such a great experience, and made a lot of friendships that last a lifetime. The education was bar none. Fast forward to my senior year when I did dual enrollment with Gannon University, and it really helped prepare me to the next road ahead, which was at Penn State University.
Yeah, amen to that. Everything you're saying just resonates with me as well, because I think I can understand that too. It was kind of innate in my understanding that I was going to go to prep. I didn't really have any other thoughts in my head of other schools or other options. I just always knew I was going to be a Rambler. I think that if you and I could, speak to 7th and 8th graders, all over Erie County, and just try to tell them why being a Rambler is so, just so amazing to be a part of your life. We would do that if we could, right? Because we know how much value we got out of that experience. To your point, I really appreciate you mentioning that, how great of an opportunity that was for you.
Yeah, it was great for me, Jimmy, because I stepped into a new environment, and each time you graduate from grade school to high school to college, there's always different challenges that are really thrown at you. But I quickly developed friendships, and I know that I can just speak firsthand from my experiences at prep, and it's like it was yesterday, right? You probably feel the same way. You know exactly who your faculty, your staff, the teachers were, the types of tests you took, the memories you made, what locker you were on what floor. And so I don't know if everybody has such vivid high school experiences, but I know I certainly do.
Yeah, amen to that. And when you kind of reflect back on your time at prep, I mean, what are some of the things that really stick out to you, in terms of either your favorite memories or faculty members? When you think about your time at prep, what is it that really comes to your mind?
Gosh, there's so many. From Mr. Achilles' class to Mr. Sytuck to Mr. Mesler and Mr. Parsons, and everybody in between. The faculty and staff were always in leadership positions that I looked up to, and they were real role models for me. And then you think about your classmates too, and the true brotherhood that you create, both in the classroom and out of the classroom on the field. And some of my best memories were, as hard as 2 a day and sometimes even 3 a day practices were, and, for football and even my freshman year in basketball, they were tough, but you just look back and you smile because that's when you had some of the most fun. You were learning life lessons together, collaboration, teamwork, communication, accountability. And it was a great, blend between the classroom setting of really, trying to nail down and become even better in your studies and help prepare you for your future while still being a young adult in the world, and getting ready for the next steps and taking those lessons either on the court or in the basketball or the football field, or even our time in swim class together. So there's so many memories. The lunchroom fettuccine Alfredo, the rallies. I
Yes.
mean, you name it, you experienced it too, right? It's like it was yesterday, man.
Oh my gosh, I know it. As soon as you say fettuccine Alfredo, a lot of us who were students at prep while Chef Cirillo was here.
Hmm.
It just takes us right back to those days right away in that cafeteria underneath the church.
I know, no doubt.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's so many of those elements that you mentioned that really help shape us in terms of who we end up becoming, through our
Mhm.
years at prep and the experiences we have. And, as you look back, how would you say that prep, during your time at prep, both in the classroom and on the football field, of course, you mentioned, the two-a-days and whatnot. How do you think that helped shape your outlook on leadership and success through your years of working your way up the ranks here at prep?
It's a great question, Jimmy. And there's probably some people who are they have natural talents and abilities, but most leaders aren't born. Most leaders are made. And there's a lot of different things that go into being a great leader, in my opinion. It's verbal communication, it's through your actions, it's following up on what you say you're going to do. And so when you think about leadership and success, I've been in certain leadership roles even in my career, and it was always really hard for me to ask my team or my teammates to do something that I was unwilling to do. And that really goes back to the accountability piece. And, whether it's in the classroom and, hitting the books hard and making sure you do well on your exams, or playing your role on the team and maybe not trying to do everything at once. Those are a few things that come to mind. And leadership is a quality I think a lot of us desire. And I really believe there's a lot of people who want to be great leaders. And in order to have some great leadership qualities, you need to find good mentors too. You need to
Mm.
find the people that you look up to, your peers, the staff. You need to find some of these mentors, I think, out there that are going to really help you in terms of leadership. And the other part that I think about when it comes to leadership is a leader can also be a good follower, and they should be a follower too, just as in a follower of Christ. If you're always the one talking and never the one listening, it's really hard to get, to galvanize certain people around you. So I think good leaders do a combination of they lead by example, but they also know when to lift other people up around them and let them shine too, and they root for their success.
Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. A lot of what you said is just hitting the nail on the head, especially when it comes to, and I've talked on this podcast and other episodes before about the importance of finding a good mentor. Whether there's somebody listening to this episode now that's a current student at prep or a college age student or in your professional career, you're never too young or too old to have a mentor and somebody that, you can meet with every now and then, just kind of run by where you're kind of looking to progress in life. And the beautiful thing about it is they just give you, some perspective and some things to consider. And, sometimes it can be difficult to necessarily find a mentor you connect with. But once you
Mhm.
do, man, it really just helps really open the doors to what you think is possible and can help guide you and navigate that. So, really liked when you were talking about mentorship there, and then
Yeah.
as well as the leadership aspect, being able to lead by example, but more importantly, who are you able to lift up around you to elevate them and what they're doing? And that's kind of the mark of a true leader, and to your point, as you were saying.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. And it's probably a good transition point. Some of the questions I have for you as well kind of involve some leadership questions for you based on what you've been able to learn in your career so far, your growth and aspirations. Pretty cool to have a younger guy on to talk about some things you've been able to do. But one of them was, I thought it was interesting, kind of part of your bio talks about how you have this mechanical engineering degree.
Mhm.
You end up going to work in commercial construction sales. You're an entrepreneur. Now you're working in, sales and marketing. So I guess maybe if you can talk to us a little bit about your professional journey, what kind of pivots you've made and how you were able to navigate those decision points in your career.
It's a great question, Jimmy, and thank you for asking it. I knew that I was always really strong in terms of math and science subjects, and engineering did not come easy to me, as it probably does not come easy to a lot of people. It was a lot of hard work to earn a mechanical engineering degree. But my thought process was, okay, I've identified the subjects that I'm good at and that I enjoy. And that was, in particular, the math and the science. And I thought to myself, okay, if that's the case, how can I maybe use those skills and apply them to a career down the road? And so one of my strong points was always communication and presentations. And as you mentioned earlier, Jimmy, thank you. I was privileged enough to give the commencement speech. Myself and Andrew Wilcox were the two speakers at our graduation. And so I just kind of thought to myself, I said, okay, how can I take a skill set, the subjects that I'm really good at, and kind of combine that with something that comes more naturally to me? And that's where I found technical sales. And so I never really had my heart or eyes or anything set on going into commercial construction, but I'd kind of just found my way there because I got my mechanical engineering degree, but always had this business acumen and interest in finance, was good with numbers in terms of accounting. And I believe people do business with people at the end of the day too. Relationships are built person to person, and there's a lot of different means and methods in the world that you can connect now with other people, just like you and I are talking on Teams or having conversations with people in your network on LinkedIn and other sources. But for so much automation out there, which is great, it's really important not to lose the relationship aspect of people to people. And I just was fortunate enough to make really good relationships at my employers. And I was with Hilti, Victaulic, and now Paragon, and have done a good job in advancing my career and have been really proud of that. But that was my mindset going into it, was thinking about the subjects that I enjoyed, what came more naturally to me, and then kind of finding your fit within. And that was really the route that I took. And it's been a great one so far. It really has.
Yeah, and I always reference and kind of think back to the quote by Steve Jobs, where you can never connect the dots looking forward, but if you look back, you can connect those dots and see how these different experiences in our lives kind of allow us to open doors that we otherwise wouldn't have had opened. And sometimes you don't realize that when you're in a professional role or position, how that's going to create a new opportunity for you that you maybe didn't even expect. So I can imagine even yourself looking back on your kind of resume, so to speak, you're probably like, wow, I have done a lot of different things, but in the moments, I'm sure they just kind of felt natural as you weave through those decisions.
Yeah, and the other point to that too, Jimmy, is just because you earn a certain degree or you may have a certain title, or if you're in high school and you're a certain position, that doesn't mean you can't explore new positions and new titles and new opportunities, right? So just because myself, Ryan Dill, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, but I was in inside sales, account manager sales, or regional sales manager, strategic marketing manager, business development. There's many different avenues that you can take. And I think the big key there is not limiting yourself and not being afraid to work cross-functionally. And I think a lot of people want to rise to the top, but it's also not a bad thing to explore other opportunities too, that, there could be some horizontal movement too, or you may want to try to acquire a new skill set. So a lot of the pivot points in my life have been really not being afraid to put myself out there to really go after the next opportunity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of I think self-confidence as well. I think that's such an important aspect, especially in our society today, is to be able to be confident in who you are and trust yourself that, if you think an opportunity is good, trust yourself that kind of I was gonna say yourself in a sense, but that you're confident enough to say this is something I want to pursue and I'm going to be courageous enough to go out and try this, something different or new that I wasn't expecting. And it kind of leads me to, next topic I want to talk to you a little about is, what inspired you to start RME Services? And with that, how do you balance running a business alongside a leadership role that you have professionally during your day job as well? If you can talk a little bit with us about how you kind of navigate that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jimmy. And we all have very busy lives, whether you're a student, whether you're a parent, we all have responsibilities. And so life is just busy and it can be chaotic and it's unpredictable. There's a lot of unknown. And so while there's days where I think I have a busy schedule and I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it, there's people that are much, higher in terms of role or rank that have much busier lives than me. So I'm number one. I'm very fortunate, very blessed. I try to have what I call PMA, positive mental attitude. And that really helps, I think, set me up for my mindset for the day and how I balance my workload. So the reason why I created RME was really twofold. The number one reason was the name of the company, RME, stands for Ryan, Morgan, and Ethan. And I have two siblings, Morgan and Ethan. And the reason I started the company or named the company was I wanted to set an example for them. I wanted them to look up to their older brother. I wanted them to know that, hey, just because you've started your career, that doesn't mean, you can't do something different or create something of your own. And so I wanted to lead by example, back to that leadership. I wanted to inspire my family and friends around me to say, hey, if I can start something new, you can too. And maybe I can help you get there. So that was really the number one reason behind it. And then the other reason was I'm very fortunate in the job that I work in today, but I also think a lot about my financial future and, my future as a whole, and what the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years will look like too. And so the other aspect of it was gaining more financial independence for myself and really believing that I can do it and picking something that I enjoy and I'm passionate about. I have a lot of interest while combining it with the seriousness of running a business and looking at your P&L or profit and loss statement or doing the accounting or trying new marketing strategies, reaching out to potential clients for sales calls and things like that. So it takes a lot of bravery and it's like a roller coaster. There's ups and downs, and you probably can relate back to that in life too. There's some high points, there's also some low points. And so when you think about balancing, a career and also a business that you start, or you're balancing how I'm going to prepare for this test or get into the right school with your athletics, it's something that takes some emotional stability, and I think getting excited is a great attribute to have, but you also just got to think to yourself, okay, this too shall pass, right? So how do I remain, kind of that rock? How do I remain, stone-like in terms of not giving up and counting on myself and knowing that, hey, I'm going to get obstacles and challenges along the way, but I can do this. I'm not really sure how yet, but I believe in myself that I can.
Yeah, I think that's such a big important element to just as you mentioned, the highs and lows of life is one, our mentality and how we approach situations. And then secondly, there is an execution function. We do have to still, we can be the most positive, optimistic people in the world, but if we don't have a strategy and a plan of how we're going to be able to attack things, nothing's going to get done. So I liked how you were talking about being able to navigate those times in your life and busyness and different seasons as well, because you do want to have that positive mental attitude that you mentioned to be able to approach things the right way, but we also need to have the execution function as well. So I like that you talked about, both of those aspects in there too. There was a book I read a little while ago. I can't remember the title, but it talked about conducting a time audit on yourself, just kind of studying, from your awake hours, what do you do during the day and how productive are you during those hours? It's not that any of us necessarily need to do more or less, but are we accomplishing what we want to accomplish? And if not, we kind of need to evaluate how we're spending our time and where we're putting that, and conducting a time audit of our lives. And that's one aspect in terms of productivity that I felt has helped me. And and
the other thing too, Jimmy, to add to that, right? You first, have the time management skill, right? And so my calendar is very sacred to me because I plan my days accordingly. And, everybody has to find what works for them. In the past, I would schedule, block in certain time, but there's other tasks that I need to accomplish during the day that I'll just add to my list and check them off as you go. So it's not only, scheduling that time or doing that self audit on yourself for time management, but to level up from there, you also have to think about your energy management. When are you most productive? Are you best in the morning? Are you best in the evening? Is that midday point the best time for you to study or the best time for you to make that new connection? So you have to think about how you want to manage your time, how you want to manage your energy. And then lastly, the probably one of the most important pieces is prioritization. You can have things on your calendar or say, I want to get this done in this week, or I'm going to read 5 books this year. But back to your point about creating the plan, how do you prioritize those tasks and what should come first based on what's most important to you? And I think often we have to realize that we may not accomplish everything that we set out that day. And that's okay. You shouldn't beat yourself up, from that. You should learn how to prioritize what's most important, and you start with those things first. That way, you got done what was most important on your schedule or on your calendar, or what your real responsibilities were. And if the other things don't get accomplished, they're of less priority because you scheduled them that way. And so you have a little bit of grace on yourself while also making sure that you're getting done what you need to.
Absolutely. And there's an old adage that says, if you fail to plan, you're actually planning to fail.
That's right.
And I think that goes right in with what you're talking about here, looking at the tasks or to-dos that you may have, the priorities, and being able to set that agenda forward, because I think so many of us have had different moments in our careers and our lives where we feel like we're just spinning our wheels. And if we actually look at what we accomplished, it probably wasn't anything of great value because we didn't necessarily have those priorities top of mind. We're just kind of, stuck in the busyness of, our work, our personal, whatever it is that we were stuck in. Obviously, listening to you talk, you're a very driven individual. You got a lot of things going on, and which is great. And you keep yourself very, focused and productive. You can tell. But when you kind of think about success, and what does that mean to you today? How do you kind of define success, and what does that look like for someone like yourself at this stage of your career?
Yeah, it's a really important topic because there's a lot of different definitions of success. And I believe where you start with success is from within. It's an internal decision too. So everybody listening to this podcast has to think about, what does success mean to you? That's the number one step. And the best way that I can describe what it means to me, Jimmy, is it's really difficult. You think about an NBA player going into their season, right? They can't control whether they win the championship or not because they have teammates. There could be injuries. There's a lot of different factors at play. They can control what they do, but they can't control all of the factors around them. So judging a season off of a championship and saying, hey, that's what success looks like. Well, it could be, but there's other milestones along the way how you could judge your success or a team's success and things like that. And so what I mean by that is, the way that I define it is, and I learned this from Bob Proctor, who started the Proctor Gallagher Institute. He's no longer here, but he's kind of been a virtual mentor to me. I never had the chance to meet him, but he talked a lot about having a worthy ideal and moving in the direction towards it. And that's what success is meaning, what you want, you've set your goal, and you're progressively taking steps to achieve that worthy ideal. And to me, that's really the way that I judge success now, is saying, okay, Ryan, you have some certain goals. It could be your career goal. It could be a continued education. It could be your health and wellness. Let's first set those goals. Let's be clear on what those goals are. And then on a weekly and monthly basis, I ask myself, am I progressively moving closer to those goals? And in some weeks or months when maybe I'm not moving so close, I just reevaluate myself and I say, okay, this is what I learned. I don't consider it failure, because if I didn't go through it, I wouldn't know how to change or where to go next. Back to your point about, Steve Jobs saying you can only connect the dots looking backwards, not forward. So you only really know how you got to the end point once you got there, but you got to define your goals clearly. I would use SMART goals in the past. And that really helped shape me in terms of having a specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, SMART goal. And then progressively taking the right steps to achieve those goals.
And I think that's one of the things that I'm getting excited listening to you talk, because one of the reasons I love doing the podcast episodes is, I kind of start off in the beginning as I introduce you as a guest, as I say, Cathedral Prep, sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. And what is Cathedral Prep? It's a place where, high school age kids come and start to learn about those habits and how to be productive and how to create success in their lives by understanding what core values are, how to create, success for their lives and start on that right track. And what I mentioned, I get excited, hearing from you talk about this stuff right now, is because you're living out what it means to have that standard of excellence. We talk about things on the podcast that have to do with business and leadership and success, things that we all as listeners of the podcast can learn from someone from yourself, because we're excited about progressing in our careers and striving for more. And striving for more doesn't mean neglecting other values in our lives, like personal or family and whatnot. It means having a good holistic look at our lives to say, how can we have different, as you were talking about, different goals, different priorities that we want to achieve success in? For me as a husband and a father of four, and a Christian, those are all important values of mine. How do I continue to strive to be better in all areas of life, personally and professionally? So I get excited hearing about you talk about goal setting and whatnot, because really the thing that stuck out to me was the word intentionality. I think for any of us to really achieve success, and I'm sure you'd speak to that, to everything you're talking about, it really comes down to intentionality and purpose and focus to be able to even start the conversation around evaluating your goals and keeping those top of mind.
I really enjoyed what you said too, Jimmy, talking about your personal life, right? And I think about if and when, I hope to live a long, happy, fulfilled life, and I think when I'm much older and much grayer and hopefully have a big family around me, I probably will be thinking a lot less about the different career moves that I've made or how much money or the type of house that I lived in and these big goals that a lot of people set. And at the end of the day, I think what I probably will be thinking the most about is my relationship with God, my relationship with my family, how I treated my friends. And so what you're saying really, really reigns true with me is, you can't neglect the personal aspect, and professional aspect. And really you should work to combine those. It's your life. You have many different aspects and parts to your life, and defining success is difficult because there's so many different things that you probably want to accomplish in your life. But kind of back to where we were talking earlier, learning how to prioritize that and be agile and balanced is really important, and it takes time to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And staying on that note of kind of the personal end of things, you mentioned that keeping a priority, your relationship with God. Do you mind sharing with us a little bit about the role that faith has played in your life? Just your ability to stay resilient. I know in the bio we talked about even your personal transformation that you've had. Losing 100 pounds and rebuilding both your body and your mindset. Can you talk about, kind of from a professional and personal standpoint, a little bit about the faith aspect of your life and how that's been incorporated to your growth?
Yeah, it's another really important topic in my life. And the best way that I can describe my faith, Jimmy, for those listeners out there is, I have a really special relationship with God because it's my relationship with God, right? And you know, each and every one of us, has the opportunity to talk to God and ask God for help. And there's countless stories in the Bible that I think a lot about too. And one thing that I've been asking God most recently to help me with having stronger faith, with helping me be the best, friend that I can be, the best son, the best brother, the best in my career, is really saying, hey, God, I don't have all the answers. I'm proud of what I've done today, but use me to do your good will. Use me in the way that you see fit, and help guide me. And you kind of, in my eyes, becoming more vulnerable and just being your unfiltered, naked self, the way that God brought you into this world. And knowing that he knows all, and he will help guide you. I really do believe in the relationship aspect between you and Jesus, and having open dialogue and really letting any of your guards down, your walls down, and opening yourself up to the Lord. And I think that I read a book called The Go Giver, and in order to be a good receiver and receive, praise and love and other things from people around you, you also have to be a really good giver too. And that to me is what relationships are, is, are you giving and also allowing yourself to receive? And, I think a lot about, that in my relationship with God is, how am I doing my best part to honor him, and knowing that, hey, he's got my back too. He wants me to be my best, and he knows the journey he's setting me on. And so those are some ways that I talk to God in my spiritual life.
Yeah, it's so important to have a good relationship with our Lord, and I like how you talked about, it's your own relationship, and it's one that I would encourage any of our listeners that are listening and maybe thinking, where do I start? You start just by having a simple prayer, pausing this episode right now and just praying and inviting God into your life, and then clicking back on to listen to the rest of this. But I think the important aspect is that God takes you where you're at, and he will lead you and he will guide you. You don't need to know all the answers and quote all the Bible verses. That's somewhere we all want to aspire to grow in our Christian walk, is to be able to learn and study and meditate on God's word more and more. But point of the matter is that I think as we begin our journey to developing a relationship with Christ, he just needs to take us from where we're at. And that's just a simple prayer of surrender and just asking him to come into our life and walk with us. And I think it's just an important element. And especially, for you and I, coming from a school like Cathedral Prep, where faith is such an important element as we're growing up through those years. And it's a great foundation to our lives, and something that we're able to grow off of, as many of our listeners probably experienced as well as you and I.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt, Jimmy. And I think a lot about spirit, mind, and body. And I know those words are important to you too.
Yep.
And I try to think about, what are the best ways I can act, as a spiritual being. What are the best ways that I can honor my Lord and Savior in the physical body that I dwell in? And what are the best ways I exercise my mind? How do I continue to have and promote good, healthy, strong thoughts that are going to lift me up and lift the other people around me? And, spirit, mind, and body is something I think about quite often.
Yeah, amen to that. Same here. It's something that's just resonated in us, and something that we'll definitely not be forgetting for our days. That's for sure.
No doubt.
And for people who are listening to the episode, and maybe you can give a little advice on this one, for people who maybe they have dreams of, they're listening to you, they feel pretty inspired about pursuing something at the next level. It could be starting their own business. It could be the next job promotion. It could be pursuing something outside of the realm of the career they're in. They want to go step outside of that. You talked about courage, earlier in the episode. But when you think about what advice you might offer somebody who has that dream of stepping out and starting something new for themselves, or pursuing something different, what advice, based on what you've been able to experience in your career, would you give that person?
Yeah, certainly. I think you have to act with some courage, right? You have to be courageous in this world, and you can develop that, right? So there's going to be many people that you encounter that will have opinions of you and what you are or aren't doing. But what is your opinion of yourself? I think you have to reflect and look in the mirror and ask that question. And so for any of those listeners who are thinking about starting their own business, for example, the first thing that I do with anyone that I'm mentoring, and I would tell any of my friends in the prep community too, is what does business ownership mean to you? And forget about the word business for a minute. What does ownership mean to you? Have you ever owned anything before? Do you own a car, or have you had to take care of a pet, or maybe a sibling or a parent, and really owned, caring for them or caring for that thing? And what does that look like to you? How do you define that? And that's where I start with everybody is, if you're thinking about starting your own business, you have to own that business, and not own it from, a monetary gain. Yes, that's an outcome of the results that you produce, but what type of accountability do you take day in and day out on your business or your ownership? And so I talk a lot about what business ownership really means. And there's a lot of different things that can happen in business. Business can go very well. Business can start dipping and going down. Some people start a business and sell it. Some hold on to it forever for positive cash flow. But you really have to think about what you want from it and how you're going to account for it. How will you own the actions that you're taking? And if you really want some inspiration, I'll give you this little nugget that really resonated well with me. If you're thinking about, hey, I really have this cool idea of maybe starting this business, or I want to try, to acquire this new skill set or go into a new field, I need a little bit of motivation to get me pumped up, right? And I heard this analogy was, you think about the term burning desire. When I say those words, it probably, it sounds cool, right? It might get you pumped up a little bit like, yeah, you got to have a lot of passion. You have to be, a lot of desire. You have to have this burning desire to go after something, but the way that I think about it is, if you were to pass, a house on the street that, let's say, unfortunately, it caught fire and it was on flames, right? And that wasn't your house, you would probably look around and say, oh my gosh, that's really unfortunate. I hope everybody's safe. Is there anything that I can do? I want to be here to support. But if that's your house that's on fire and your child or your brother or your dog is in that house, you are going in that house to save that person that you love or that thing you love so dearly with burning desire. And nothing is going to stop you. And so if you really want to get pumped up, and to me, that kind of gives me chills where it's like, okay, I'm going to go after this thing with this vigorous passion because I believe in it, and you have to really double down on yourself. And that to me is what, this burning desire piece of having so much passion for a subject that you love and combining that with the topic I talked about earlier, which is applying emotional stability through it. You're going to get pumped up to go on the new fitness journey or start the business, but it's not going to carry you all the way through it. So something else will eventually take motivation's place. And where, that leads me to is having a strong why. Your why should be your foundation. You should first think about writing a mission statement of, not necessarily how much money you want to gain or the type of job that you want to have. You want to think about why you're doing something rather than what you're doing.
And those are all things that I was getting excited listening to you talk about, that burning desire and the great example you gave there. It's not about this external motivation or excitement levels that are going to get us to the end of a journey or the end of something we want to achieve. What do they talk about with the start of New Year? Everybody gets a new gym membership. They're in there for the first 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. And then by about day 21, everyone's gone and the regulars are back in there. That's such a, it's what's beyond the excitement levels and the motivation, because that stuff will fade. It's having that burning desire to keep you fueled. But beyond the fuel, what habits are we creating for ourselves to create sustainable success? Because it's not sustainable maybe for somebody, using the workout example, to go from not working out at all to 5 days in the gym, an hour and a half every day. That's not sustainable to what you were doing. But how can we look at growth from a stair-step approach and say, what's one positive decision you can make today to increase your health? Maybe it starts with, and you went through this experience, losing as much weight as you did and what you shared with us. You would probably say just doing little things every day add up. It's a great book by Darren Hardy called The Compound Effect, or Jeff Olson with The Slight Edge. These ideas that it's not taking one massive step on day one and then all of a sudden now you're going to be where you want to be. It's these little decisions that we make on a daily basis that culminate in being able to have results like you've been able to achieve personally and professionally to that regard.
That's exactly right, Jimmy. You said it beautifully, right? It's a compounding effect of success over time. So you have to think about what's most sustainable in your life to yield those results. And something that I think about quite often is, okay, well, what's the diet after the diet? Meaning, hey, if you really want to change your body or your mind, or maybe have better eating habits or better sleeping habits, or whatever your goal may be, you can kind of go on the fad diet, or you can say, this summer I'm locking in and I'm going to have the body of my dreams. That's great. I encourage you to set those high goals, but I would also encourage you to look a little bit more down the road in terms of, okay, what's that diet after the diet? Meaning, okay, you went all in for maybe these 3 months, but did you go back to doing the same old stuff and kind of resume the way that it was in the past? And if so, that really didn't create that sustainability that's going to carry you into the future. And that applies with everything. It's not just fitness, it's your job, it's your personal life. It's great to do something today, whether it's extraordinary or not. I would more positively encourage you to just do something small to start. What can you commit to on maybe a weekly basis? In the past, I would set certainly yearly goals, and I would try to do a little bit each day, but each day is different, right? We live busy lives, and I've set more weekly goals for myself where, hey, maybe I'm traveling this day, or I didn't quite get to the gym, or whatever the case may be. But I can look back on the weeks and months and see if I'm moving closer in that right direction, right? And I think that's most sustainable for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've often been very guilty of having an all in or not mentality where it's like, if I'm going to do something, if I can't do it all the way, I'm not going to do it. Or, vice versa. If there's something that I want to pursue, but there's, no way I think I can accomplish it all in one bite, I don't do it. And I think, something I had to learn as I was maturing through my 20s was that's not actually how success is created. It's not sustainable, and it's not actually how I'm going to achieve the goals that I have for my life. It's basically looking at it and saying, how can I stack more wins than losses? Because not every
Yeah.
day is going to be a success, not every week is going to be a success. But if I could have a good batting average, so to speak, talking about like a baseball analogy here, since I played at prep, if I could
Yeah.
have a good batting average for the amount of wins I have compared to losses during a week, well, I'll take that and stack that up for me week after week. And after a whole year, I'll be way further along than if all of a sudden by week 3 I said, well, I missed 2 weeks, I'm just going to quit now. And that's not going to be good for anybody, let alone myself and my own personal and professional goals. So, yeah, I love how this conversation has been going, just talking about some real good tactical things that people can do with setting goals and being able to look at them with intentionality and focus, but also talking about that motivation piece behind it, that burning
Yeah.
desire, and being able to identify those things that we want to achieve and accomplish. Because at the end of the day, if you keep that in front of you, you have no doubt, but
Yeah.
the desire to move forward with those pursuits.
And the cool part, Jimmy, is today in this age, we live in the social media world right now, right? So all of our listeners, are I'm sure glued in with Pinterest and TikTok and Instagram and all that. And you can say, hey, I want this $5 million home, or I want to have a yacht one day, or I want to be an MLB player, whatever the case may be. But if you're saying you want to become the CEO of a company, but you've never had a leadership position, you really got to think about what's great about social media, in my opinion, Jimmy, is it shows you what could be, right? If somebody else did it, you can do it too. There's no doubt about it. Make no qualms, no mistake about it. You can achieve it 100%. But you have to self-reflect and say, well, where am I starting today? If you want to get in better shape, if you wanted to lose 50 pounds, but you've never lost 10 pounds before, that's where you start creating the small incremental changes, to help get you there. If you want to be the CEO of a company one day, maybe start by thinking, what do other people in leadership roles around me do? Or what do their habits look like? Or how do they communicate? Who do they connect with? And so you got to think, okay, let's be real with where I am today and having these big goals and recognizing success along the way. But where many people fall short is saying, I want to go after this grandiose thing. And they get down on themselves because they didn't get there in the time they expected, right? It's back to our
Mhm.
conversation about God too, right? You can ask for abundance and great things in your life, but he may not give them to you at the time that you want. And it's the same with your goals. You may not get there as fast as you want, but creating these incremental changes to help you get in a good mindset will get you there over time, and I just encourage people to think about where are you today, and depending on where you want to go, what are those small things that will take the next steps in, climbing that ladder. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the reasons why, again, I'm referencing how we were talking earlier, the importance of a mentor, and I think to kind of, throw that out there a little bit further, to find somebody who is in a position that you aspire to be in. So to your point, the CEO analogy, well, who do you know or who are you connected with that could be someone that is in a CEO or president type position that you could ask, to invite for a cup of coffee or lunch sometime and see if they'd be willing to spend 20, 30 minutes with you or in an hour to be able to start to have that relationship with them. You don't need to go be, weird about it and say, will you be my mentor? But just, being able to reach out to somebody who's in a position where you want to be. And this could be fitness wise. You could, want to run a marathon. Well, have you talked to people who ran a marathon and asked them what their progress and process was like to prepare for that? Mentors can look in all different ways and have different, types of angles that things we want to accomplish. But it's everything that you're talking about. It's kind of having that little bit of self-reflection with where you're at. And that's where a mentor can really help you start to kind of navigate a little bit of path of advice to recommend you on what to do next if you maybe a position they're in. All right, we're kind of winding down on time, so I'm going to transition to one last question for you. You ready?
I'm ready for it, Jimmy. Hit me.
So this is a fun one, a good. I call it my bonus question whenever I list it out in the number of questions because I ask every alumni or alumnus, I should say, that comes on the episode this question, which it's been fun, a good common trend in the episodes. But so the question is, Ryan, if you could go back in time and speak at your commencement, and I add again because you were the speaker previously, but you know what? This time going back and knowing what you know now, what maybe would you say to your classmates? And this is interesting since you were the commencement speaker. What would you say similarly, and then maybe what would you say different or new to them, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I love this question, Jimmy, because I would double down on what I told my classmates in terms of the recognition of the last 4 years, right? And, I'm 29 now, right? And that's young to some of you and old to other, people who are listening. But, what I've learned in my time since prep is that these are going to be some of the best 4 years of your life. You're going to create the friendships, the relationships, again, the time in the classroom, the time out, that are going to last you a lifetime. I would really double down on recognizing how much fun we had, how hard it was too, the ups and downs that we had in our community and what we accomplished together, and recognizing that as classmates and friends and brothers. And so I would first start there. And then the next piece I would say is, hey guys, we are going to all go off in completely different directions now. So here's going to be the hard part is, Ryan's going to move to Florida and Jimmy's going to take a role at prep, and, she's going to get married and you're going to start this new job, and you're all going to be living your own lives in completely new places, different career opportunities, new connections, new relationships. And so how do we best stay connected, in the same way that we felt with our time here? And my advice would just to encourage anybody listening out there today, and what I would tell my friends and classmates is, it's going to be really hard going into the future to have as close of relationships as we've had in our time at prep, because we're all going to do fun, exciting things. But let's really make the effort with each other to stay connected, to stay in the community, to remain a brotherhood. And that takes this relationship piece, right? Whether it's the Facebook groups, whether it's doing, golf outings together, whether it's, getting together to just chat about, personal life, and maybe recognizing somebody who had a new baby or congratulating somebody on their job. And again, it doesn't take this grandiose big gesture, but if you're thinking about one of your classmates, why don't you just send them a nice, heartfelt, positive message, or give them a call, or leave them a voicemail, and something like that. And so what I would say, Jimmy, is just, I want to stay as connected as we can with each other because this is how special it's been to me. I've loved my time here because it's about the people who have been here with me. And life's going to get crazy, but let's really think about how we can honor each other and honor ourselves and really think about what's most important in terms of relationships to me. And that's, family, friendships, and the Lord too, and so that would be my encouragement to my class.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to be able to be reflective and speak back to your classmates about. It's a neat position that I'm in where our office, we host our 5-year, reunions for Prep and Villa alumni at Prep. And it's neat to see, classmates come together for their 5 and 10 and 20 and 50-year reunions. And some people, they will come and they'll be here for their 40th class reunion, and they will say, this is the first time I've been back on Cathedral Prep's campus since I graduated, or this is the first time I've seen my classmates since the day we graduated. And it's a very neat thing that after all those years, they're excited to come back. But it's also something that you're speaking of, which is our invitation to stay connected to one another. And that's obviously something that our office tries our best to facilitate among everybody. Of course, with busy lives, it's not always possible for everyone. Nor does everybody want to stay connected either with some of us, which is totally fine, which is funny. But nonetheless, I think to your point, we had such a great experience during our time at Prep. And Villa alumni would say they had a great experience during their time at Villa. And just that message of encouragement to stay connected with each other through life's, challenges and successes and all the great things that happen. Definitely a wise word spoken to the classmates as you would go back in time, so to speak, to say to them.
Ask me again in another 10 years and we'll see what my answer is then, Jimmy.
Yeah. If I'm still doing the podcast, then I'll have you back on and we'll talk about it then for sure.
That's right, man. Well, hey, I just want to recognize you again. You're doing a fantastic job with, building these relationships. And I know your presence in the, alumni, association with Prep and, trying to make sure that everybody stays connected, and so I certainly recognize it. I appreciate the hard work you're doing and just keep up the awesome work, man. It's been a real honor and privilege to speak with you today. And I hope anybody listening gets a few good pieces of advice today.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and, kind of preparing, before coming on to really leave the listeners with some good things in terms of I usually call them nuggets, some good nuggets, a lot of good points, like a lot of good notes that you've made. This is an episode I'll be excited to go back and listen to myself and, look for ways that I can continue to improve, in my professional and personal career as well. I always enjoy conversations like this where you can tell you're quote unquote in the hunt, so to speak. You're growing yourself professionally and personally, and it's exciting to hear that come off of your voice and the passion and the energy you have. So appreciate the kind words you had for me, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to record this episode with us.
You bet, my friend. We'll do it again soon. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Amen, Ryan. Thank you
Awesome.
Again. Appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks, Jimmy. Take care. Have a great day.